Hello, welcome to a video lecture that I've prepared for you on invention and pre-writing, the first step in the writing process. Okay, so in order to talk about invention and pre-writing, I had a question for you. What do you do when you receive a writing assignment? So I imagine one of the first things you want to do is read it over thoroughly, figure out what's being asked of you, and what type of document you're supposed to produce, the purpose of the document that you're creating. So is it a letter? Is it an essay? Is it a report? What type of essay is it? So maybe figure out some of those specifics first. And then most of us move on to a series of steps in our invention work. And the first one that comes to mind that most people say is brainstorming. So what is brainstorming? Is it literally a storm inside your brain? Probably not. So we don't see lightning bolts and rain clouds inside your brain. So what do we mean by brainstorming? We're probably referring to many of these other things that are mentioned here. So the first one that I have is list making. So just whether you are trying to come up with a topic or whether you are exploring a topic once you have come up with it. These are invention strategies, so you might be jotting down possible topics, or if you already have a topic, then you're trying to kind of unpack it a little bit, explore it in a little more detail. So list making, in this example that I have here, we see a numbered list. It doesn't need to be numbered. But most of us try to engage in some of this process, and it certainly helps to get kind of our writerly juices flowing, to try to capture some ideas on paper and take it from there. You can build from that. The second method that many people talk about is outlining, and what we're seeing here is actually kind of a formal outline. We see Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, and then under that capital A, B, C. And if we went down to the next level, we would see number 1, number 2, number 3, and then the next level, little a, B, C, and then down to little Roman numerals after that. So there's a formality to this type of document. Most of us in the invention and pre-writing stage do not actually engage in this type of outlining, a formal outline. This type of outline is easiest to make after the final document has been written, but instead what most of us do at this point we might call a scratch outline. So a scratch outline, similar to list making, that you might write something down, maybe just put a little dash or something in front of it, and then you write something else down, so another dashed item underneath it. And if you feel like the next dashed item kind of fits underneath that previous item in kind of a hierarchy, then we tend to indent it a little bit. So we indent, and then we back indent to get back to the first level of indentation. So probably most of us are not going to use Roman numerals and ABC and stuff like that, but we might use a series of dashes and a system of indentation and bringing the indentation back to the left to kind of indicate a hierarchy of our ideas. A little inside information, personal aside here in terms of the formal outline. When I was in high school, our teachers required us to produce an outline, a rough draft, and a final draft. And so everyone that I knew wrote the rough draft and the final draft, and then we wrote the formal outline from the final draft. So it really isn't something necessarily that you can create to this level of formality in advance. It's much easier to do after the fact. So, okay, another type of invention, pre-writing activity that many of us are familiar with is called free writing. Free writing was actually, the term was actually coined by a guy named Peter Elbow, and his idea about free writing was that you write without stopping, without pausing for 10 minutes. And If you run out of things to say, the important thing is to keep the pen moving. If you run out of things to say, write the same word over and over again until you do think of something to say. One of the ideas about free writing is that you try to turn off your internal censor, your internal editor, and just write what comes into your mind. So a little humor in this image here. It says for a predetermined amount of time, which is the way most people approach it, or words, which I guess if you were doing it on a computer, you could probably see your word count. And then the angst part is kind of a joke, so anxiety or anguish. So, but mostly you would try to write, whether on paper or on your computer, for about 10 minutes without stopping. Sometimes on a computer, people will actually, if they're on a desktop, turn off their monitor, or if they're on a laptop, dim their screen so that they can't see what they're writing, so that they're only writing what comes into their head. So you might give that a shot. Another form of free writing is called focused free writing, which is basically after you've done your free writing for 10 minutes, you go back over it and you look for good ideas and underline them or highlight them or whatever. And then you take one of those good ideas and you put it at the top of a new clean sheet of paper, and then you do your 10 minutes of free writing trying to make it flow out of that idea. So that's the focused part of focused free writing. So if you're not familiar with it, give it a shot. It's very easy to do. Another invention pre-writing strategy that people have is mind mapping or webbing. You might be familiar with this. In this example, we have a bubble in the middle. That's supposed to be where your main topic goes. And so it can be used to think about possible topics. Maybe you're writing essay 1 in the middle bubble, or after you've already decided on a topic, it's a way to explore that topic. You put your topic in the middle and kind of look at the different things that branch out from that. A lot of times, in this particular case, the branches branch out and words are written on the branches, and then they branch some more and words are written on those branches. So another method I've seen is that after the first bubble, then it branches out, and these different words that we see, style, structure, paper, use, and lines, those also become bubbles. And then, for instance, on the style one, where it says fun, emphasis, personal, and beauty, then those also become bubbles too. So you can kind of bubble, 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 and make things branch out. Sometimes you might even see a relationship between a bubble on one side of the mind map and a bubble on the other side, and you might draw like a dashed line to connect those two. So a lot of people like mind maps because it doesn't feel necessarily like writing, which can be intimidating for some people. The other thing is that people think that mind maps maybe represent more naturally the way we think about things, that we think about ideas spatially, whereas when we write in a more linear fashion. So mind maps can be a good way if you're used to doing things in paragraph form or in a free writing form. Try one of these other invention strategies such as mind maps or webbing, and some people call it clustering too, and that might help you to look at things a bit differently. Okay. Another method that I have is called dialoguing, and so in this example, literally sitting down face to face with someone else and talking about the assignment or about your topic. You could do this at the Writing Center, talk to a tutor this way. If you did, I would strongly encourage you to take a copy of the assignment with you. You may just do it with a friend or one of your parents or something like that, someone you live with. So this is face-to-face dialoguing, but I've also seen it take shape in a number of other different fashions, such as maybe you're talking on your cell phone to someone else, so you're dialoguing that way. Another way that I've encouraged students to pursue this is with letter writing or emailing. Maybe you want to draft an email to a friend and say, hey, how's it going? How's your summer going? Just started summer school. I already have my first assignment in my English class, blah, blah, blah. You start talking about it. And by kind of talking about it to someone else, you actually find yourself engaging in some of this invention strategy that way. So dialoguing can take a number of different forms: face-to-face, over the phone, email, letter, but basically it's a way of talking through your ideas. Okay, and then lastly, I think there are a couple of other invention strategies, but I just listed this one as incubating, and unfortunately, it's oftentimes many people's favorite method is, I'm just going to lie down here on the grass and enjoy this summer day and think about my English paper or something. But the drawback of this is that things tend to stay in the incubator up in your brain, and we need to get them out and down on paper so that we can develop those ideas. So don't incubate too long in this manner. Make sure at some point you get to writing on paper or writing on the computer and try to capture some of those ideas. So, and that kind of leads directly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, the discovery draft. I mentioned that in the course schedule. The discovery draft is intended to be an aid to discovery, so hence the name. It's a process of uncovering or discovering what you already know about your topic, and also uncovering or discovering what you don't know about your topic. So if you're incubating, then if you engage in this discovery draft, we're trying to capture things on paper. And by writing them down, writing can be an aid to memory that by capturing it on paper, we actually free up our brain to think about other things. So write it down on paper and you'll think of more things to think about. Write that down on paper. So, and in terms of uncovering or discovering what you don't know, then frequently the discovery draft points to what research you need to do. So maybe for this particular topic, it might point to research where we need to go to the library and do some research. So the discovery draft that I'm envisioning, how it kind of differs from the free write and from our rough draft, is that the free writing is just kind of nonstop writing, and the rough draft that you're going to create is going to have fully developed paragraphs in it. But the discovery draft is somewhere in between free writing and a rough draft. So oftentimes, with the rough draft, we're already thinking about an external audience, but oftentimes for the discovery draft, you are the audience for your own writing. You're kind of writing this for yourself. It's somewhere between you and that outside audience. But so you may have fully developed paragraphs in your discovery drafts, or you may also just have little single line blurbs to yourself. And oftentimes when we workshop the discovery draft, it becomes a little bit difficult because it makes the most sense to you as the writer, and sometimes not as much sense to your peers as peer responders. So you oftentimes have to explain or walk them through your discovery draft to help them to understand it. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that, but we are going to try to workshop our discovery drafts. Okay, discovery draft, you may have also heard the term zero draft, so it comes before the rough draft. I personally do not like the term zero draft because zero seems like nothing, and it implies that the discovery draft is not worth anything. But I think the discovery draft is worth a lot. It really helps in the writing process. So I prefer the more optimistic and positive term discovery draft rather than zero draft.